What's up everyone? Today I thought I'd answer a question that was bothering me when I just started out. Now, in my opinion, a tent is the most important piece of backpacking gear. So I remember when I just started out, I was wondering, will one of those lightweight, just below $100 tents be enough, or should I invest more right from the start in a better ultralight tent? I've tried out both, so in this video I'll give you my own personal opinion on that. Over here, I got the Bessport 2-person lightweight backpacking tent, which costs about $80. And over here, I have the R.E.I. Flash Air 1 Ultralight tent, which costs about $250. But before I set both of them up, let's weigh them and see what's the weight difference. I got my luggage scale over here, and I'll start by weighing the Bessport tent. Alright, so the Bessport tent weighs at 2.36 kilograms. Now let's weigh the R.E.I. Flash Air 1. The R.E.I. Flash Air 1 weighs 780 grams. Alright, so as you can see, the weight difference is actually incredibly large. The Bessport tent weighs roughly 3 times as much, or about 1.5 kilogram more. In terms of weight, imagine carrying another 2 vodka bottles, in addition to all the other vodka bottles that you usually carry. Personally, I come from Eastern Europe, so I usually carry about 1 liter of vodka for each day of hiking, just to, stay sharp and not get lost. So 2 more bottles really is nothing for me. I mean, if you're just starting out, it really isn't that bad. This tent is still much lighter compared to those cheaper camping tents, which usually weigh at least 3 kilograms. But if you're doing long distance trails or if you're backpacking very frequently, saving 1.5 kilograms is incredibly much and definitely worth it for the extra cost. Also, check out the packed size differences. The Bessport tent basically takes up 1/3 of my backpack, but this one packs down incredibly small. So if you want to size down your backpack, for instance from 55 liters to 45, then getting an ultralight tent is a must. Okay, now I'll set up both tents and show you a time lapse of that so you can see which one is faster to set up. I think this time I set up the R.E.I. tent a bit faster, but that's only because I couldn't find good spots on where to put the stakes because the ground is very rocky here. But usually the R.E.I. tent is more difficult to set up. That's because this one is a freestanding tent and this one is a trekking pole tent. And trekking pole tents are usually much harder to set up if you want to achieve a nice and even pitch. By the way, not all ultralight tents are trekking pole tents. You can also find some ultralight freestanding tents, which will be very similar to that one, only from lighter materials, and they'll weigh about 1 to 1.2 kilograms, and they'll cost about $250 to $350. Now let's compare the size and the livability on both of these tents. Obviously, you can see that the R.E.I. is much smaller. It also comes in a 2-person model, but that one is still smaller compared to the Bessport 2-person tent. From the inside, the Bessport tent is pretty spacious. You get an entrance and a vestibule on each side. But if you put 2 sleeping mats in there, there's not really much room left for anything else. If this sleeping pad would be a bit wider, there wouldn't be any room left here. So you have to keep your gear in the vestibules if 2 people are sleeping here. The Bessport tent is pretty spacious, and if you sleep here, your head and your feet won't brush against the walls. You can also sit up and change your clothes if you want to, and your head won't brush against the roof. In each of the corners, you basically get a pocket like this for organizing all of your stuff. There's also another mesh panel on the roof, which is great for keeping your headlamp. With R.E.I., you only get 1 entrance and 1 vestibule. As you can see, the vestibule is pretty large. Inside, you can fit only 1 sleeping pad, and you have to kind of keep the rest of your gear either in the side or out here in the vestibule. As you can see, it's pretty cramped inside, and honestly, I would rather call this a shelter, not a tent. When you're sleeping here, your head will occasionally brush against the wall, as well as your feet. For organizing your gear, you only get 1 pocket, and unfortunately, if you want to hang your headlamp up here, you can't really do that in this tent. Again, the situation isn't as bad in freestanding ultralight tents, such as the Nemo Hornet. However, they do cost more, usually over $300, and they're also a bit heavier, weighing roughly at 1 kilogram. In terms of rain resistance, both of these tents are completely waterproof. I've slept in both of them and everything was completely dry. But now let's talk about the ventilation. On the Bessport tent, the ventilation is very good because it's built from 2 walls, with the interior being mostly from mesh fabric. It has 2 vestibules and it comes with 2 ventilation holes. So you rarely get any condensation there, but the situation is much different on the R.E.I. Flash Air 1. Because it has a single wall design with only a few mesh panels, and because it has only a single ventilation hole and a single vestibule, this tent is pretty bad at condensation. What I mean with that is that if you sleep in it near water or in very humid climates, you'll have a lot of condensation buildup. That said, I personally don't experience it that much because I mostly use it in the mountains like here, where there's less humidity and it's generally cooler. For instance, over here at about 2,000 meters altitude, you rarely get any condensation. Although the condensation is particularly bad in the R.E.I. Flash Air 1, it's generally an issue with all ultralight trekking pole tents that come with only one wall. It's something that you have to deal with if you want to go ultralight. In terms of durability, I'd like to say that the more expensive $250 tent is more durable compared to this cheap $80 tent, but that's not actually true. Well, obviously the zippers are better, the seams are better, and overall the R.E.I. tent just feels more well made. However, it's made from an incredibly thin fabric, which you can easily puncture. The Bessport tent is much more resistant to any tears from branches or sharp rocks like you have here. Again, it's something that you just have to get used to with ultralight tents. You have to be very, very careful when using them. So far, I haven't had any issues in terms of durability with the Bessport tent, but just from the overall feel of the zippers, the seams, and everything else, I do think that they'll break faster compared to the R.E.I. tent. I'd say that in durability, they're both about identical because the R.E.I. can be easily punctured and the Bessport will just wear down faster in all the other elements. For instance, on just the bag itself for the Bessport tent, a seam was already starting to come loose and I had to use some needle and some thread to fix it. Although the tent itself is still in a perfect condition, I think it says something about the quality. Alright, so I've been talking about both of them for a while now, but I still haven't answered which one is better in my opinion. So let's fix that. I think if you're just starting out and you're not really sure if hiking will be your next main hobby, then it's probably better to get a cheaper lightweight tent, like this Bessport tent or something similar. It does take up a lot of space in your backpack and it weighs about 3 times as much as my ultralight tent, but in my opinion, it doesn't really matter too much for someone who's just starting out. Also, this tent is easier to set up, it's better at condensation, and it has much more room inside. However, if you've been hiking for a while or if you're planning on doing long distance hiking, I think it's worth it to invest about $250 to $350 in an ultralight tent like this one. It doesn't have to be a trekking pole tent. You can also get a freestanding one, which will be a bit heavier, but it will be a bit more spacious inside and be much better at dealing with condensation. Once you start hiking more, you usually want to reduce the weight in your backpack. And the easiest way to do that is by getting an ultralight tent, an ultralight backpack, bringing lighter food, and starting to filter water. I think those 4 things account for maybe 70% of the total weight loss. So in my opinion, it's worth it to invest in a light tent and a light backpack as well. I linked out to both of these tents as well as some other lightweight gear that I use personally in the video description. So check that out if you want to. As always, thanks for watching. I hope this video helped you out and I'll see you next time. But only if you subscribed. Bye. Bye-bye now.